You're listening to Ask Dr. Jake. My name is Dr. Jake Tucker, owner and founder of Good Life Family Chiropractic here on the south side of Lincoln. And I'm coming to you today, Labor Day. Happy Labor Day, everyone, with another message of hope, health, and wholeness. And so I wanted to talk to you today in honor of Labor Day about a problem I've been seeing a lot in my office, especially on re-exams, especially with established patients here in the office. We do re-exams in our office at least once every 6 months, but every 12 visits without fail, to make sure that our patients are getting healthier all the time. All the time. We want to make sure that everything they're doing, everything they're investing is taking them the right direction. If it's not taking them the right direction, then we adapt and we change and we alter the things that we're doing to make sure that we ultimately are getting healthier. And, so how does that happen? It happens through our 5 essentials, either against our 5 essentials or through our 5 essentials. These are the laws and principles that God designed that govern health and healing. The first, number one, is the way that you think about your health matters. It's your mindset, your stress levels, how you sleep. All those things matter with your health. And what we'll see is that consistently, patients over time, if their stress levels go up, their health gets worse. Consistently. But if you invest in creating peace, in creating an environment of peace and well-being and joy and love and hope, that you ultimately get healthier. Number two, the central nervous system. If the central nervous system is healing and functioning well, it's the system that controls all other systems. And if that's healing and functioning well, then the other systems heal and function well. And so we need that to be healthy. The spine surrounds and protects that. The third thing that we look at is the nutrients that you're putting in your body, proper nutrition. I'm not talking about dieting. I'm talking about creating a healthy lifestyle of eating well, eating to live instead of living to eat. And so when we create a proper healthy environment, when your nervous system is replacing the cells inside your body, which it does anywhere from every 3 days to every 20 years, depending on the cell that we're talking about, it gets those cells and the backbones for those cells from the nutrients that you're putting inside yourself. If you put in good, healthy stuff, you become good, healthy stuff. And so we need to invest in our nutrition to keep us healthy. Number 4 is actually the oxygen through exercise and fitness. Our overall fitness levels determine the amount of oxygen saturation that we have inside of our bloodstream. If our fitness level is high enough, then we get enough oxygen to every organ, cell, and tissue in your body, which requires oxygen in order to live. When we don't, when we become more sedentary, it increases the amount of carbon dioxide and byproducts that are just sitting around that create a state of sickness and disease in and around our cells. And the number five thing is actually your toxicity. So if you grew up in an environment, if you surround yourself with an environment that is toxic, you have arsenic exposure, you have cadmium exposure, you have a mercury exposure or an aluminum exposure. Those things can build up in your system and create an interference to the healing process that leads to sickness and disease. And if you're poisoned, there's nothing I can do in any other of those things that's going to make you healthy if we don't remove the poison first. And so what I've been seeing ever since COVID started on my re-exams is that there's increase in 2 specific types of stresses that actually lead to other stresses and interferences in the healing process. Number 1 is an emotional stress. We are more stressed by what we're hearing, by our environment right now because of COVID, and more the media's response and push in COVID coverage than at any other time. You go to Facebook, it's COVID. You go to the news, it's COVID. You go and you read about politics, it's COVID. You go to church and it's COVID, and it's all stress about COVID. And I get it. People are afraid. That fear creates sickness. And we're commanded not to be afraid. Do not fear, says the Lord Almighty. He's the one that controls everything. He's the one that determines when you go home. You think he put this virus here for a purpose? Absolutely. Absolutely. He's the creator of all things. All things. And while he may not be the one who ultimately led to the sickness and disease and death, he ordained all this to happen in his own time. He's not going to let anything happen that wasn't supposed to happen in the first place. He's calling some of us home. He's preparing us for a time that we need to be ready for. And guess who's not dying of COVID? Healthy people. Those of us that are taking care of ourselves. Those of us that are willing to put in the work. And I'm not sitting here and I'm not blaming you. You are not It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But we've created a culture of sickness and disease. And so the stress, it gets to us a lot more. What's the number one comorbidity with COVID? It's sickness. Obesity is the number one comorbidity. Having heart disease is also a comorbidity. Common cancer, comorbidity. Breathing issues, comorbidity. These are the top causes of death in the United States, regardless of COVID. If you want to be healthy, we have to address these from a lifestyle perspective. We have to start being proactive as far as our health is concerned. So the stress that we're getting under, it contributes to everything. It compromises your immune system. Your immune system drops. Get sleep, get rest, create an environment of peace. Take control over what's going through your mind. What's between your ears matters way more than just about anything else. What's going on out here doesn't matter. What's inside your head, what's going on in your mind matters way more than anything else that's happening outside. Number two thing I'm seeing is we're working from home. And so this is something that is in my wheelhouse. I address this all the time with people that work from home, work in an office. Your work environment, your work posture absolutely matters for your health. When you're talking about interferences to the healing process, there's 3 T's that I need you to remember. The first, especially if you're writing notes, pick up a pen and paper, write this down. The first thing that can interfere with the healing process is toxins, right? If you have a toxic exposure, it will interfere with your ability to heal. And whether that's pure poison like arsenic, or if it's one of these things that's a metabolic byproduct that just happens inside you and your body is designed to take care of it, but it's not being allowed to because of a dysfunction in that detoxification pathway, or if it's something that's less toxic that in small quantities doesn't hurt you, but in large quantities or small quantities over time hurts you, it can absolutely interfere in that healing process. Things like aluminum, things like mercury, things like cadmium, things like pesticides, things like BPA, things like PCOAs, these artificial chemicals that we put on and around our bodies. SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate, one of the most common ingredients in soaps and body washes and shampoos, even in some toothpaste. It's highly toxic and can cause cancer in the body. So yeah, number one, toxicity. Number two, stress. The T for this is just thoughts. Your thought life matters. If your stress levels are too high, it's going to interfere with it. And the number 3 T is trauma, physical trauma. So we've talked in the past about car accidents. 5 miles an hour is enough to create ligament damage in a spine. That's enough. Any ligament damage in the spine is going to create a situation where the protective mechanism, the spine, the vertebra that surround and protect your spinal cord actually start to create damage to the nerves and to the spinal cord and to the brainstem. And so we want to make sure that everything's intact. So that there's the traumatic traumas like a car accident, like a slip and fall injury. When we get ice in the winter, we'll have some slips and falls. And even a 5 mile an hour trauma is enough to create ligament damage. So we want to avoid those. So drive safe, be careful when you're walking outdoor in the winters, try not to fall off of ladders, that type of thing. With my son, you heard last week, he got kicked in the head by his sister. And when he went down for a nap at daycare, he quit breathing. He ended up with a seizure. And it was me adjusting his spine that actually got him out of his seizure and got him breathing normally again. This happens all too often, but it's not always because of traumas like that. Yes, we have a lot, especially as kids, we're slipping and falling, going down the stairs. I mean, I can think of how many times my daughter has fallen down the stairs just because she's not careful. She's not a careful person. She never had a care about walking. Where my firstborn, he didn't even walk until 14 months because he wanted to be an expert in walking before he started to walk. Same thing with crawling. He waited to crawl until he was going to be an expert in crawling. It's different between different kids, but there's a trauma that we all do to our spines every single day, especially in the United States. We sit for too long. This is a postural trauma. And you can do this. I see this with hygienists and dentists all the time. Some of the worst spines out there are not in manual laborers. They're in dentists, people that can put a stress position of their spine all the time, and then they stay there for hours on end. And then, yes, they end up with more herniated discs and more back surgeries and more neck surgeries than just about any other profession, not because of the overload of stress that they put on, but over time, the small amounts of stress have built up and their x-rays reflect that. Now, when you look at an x-ray, you should see your spine straight up and down from the front. And then from the side, you should see 3 45-degree curves. When it's in that position, your nervous system is perfectly protected. But when it's out of that position, when it's misaligned, even 2 millimeters or 2 degrees, that amount of misalignment can put enough stress on the nerve roots or on the spinal cord or on the brain stem such that it decreases the amount of signal running through those nerves, the ability of your brain to communicate with the organs at the other end by as much as 60%. That, my friends, is called subluxation. Literally means less light, a condition of less light. It's the ability of the brain to see what's going on at the other end. So whether you're sitting at a laptop all day, every day, or you're working from a desk at a computer, or you're a dentist and you're sitting there turning to the side, looking down into people's mouths and, just working from that hunched position, or you do work manual labor and you work on a roof because you're a carpenter, or you're bent over your work every single day. These things over time, they break down the spine, they break down the discs, and ultimately create an interference in the ability of your brain to talk to the organs, cells, and tissues at the other end. And so we need to make sure that you're taking care of this. And so what I'm doing today for the first 5 callers, and you're going to have to leave a message because nobody's here right now. It's Labor Day, remember. Leave a message, and the first 5 messages I get are going to get a 50% discount off of exam and any necessary x-rays set up in the next week. So that number, 531-289-7100. That's 531-289-7100. We'll set up an appointment for this week, and we'll get you in. We'll get an exam done. We'll do a neurological exam. We'll take a full physical exam. We'll get your history. If necessary, we'll do some imaging and some x-rays, and all of that for just $65. When we went to the hospital and we got these tests done, just the x-rays cost me over $1,000. So you're looking at over a 90% discount off of your x-ray price, just going for those, let alone what we're looking at as far as the exam and the analysis and then the report. When I sit down with you and I go over these things together, we'll begin to make a plan. This is a 3-day process. We'll start with the exam. If needed, we'll get those x-rays and imaging, and then from there, I'll analyze them. I'll go over those with you, and then we'll see how you respond to an adjustment. The adjustment typically costs $60 because you're listening on the radio today. You get a 10% discount off of that. And then we sit down for your 3rd visit where we go through all of the recommendations, the plan, the cost, the insurance, all of those details so that you know exactly what it's going to take to invest in your health. Again, that number, 531-289-7100. You can visit us on the web at goodlifefamilychiropractic.com and join me every day for another episode of Ask Dr. Jake.